Great. Thank you so much, David. On behalf of all of us at Habitat for Humanity, I want to thank Engage for Good for this award. We are honored to be recognized for the work we're doing alongside our incredible corporate partners to create more opportunities for decent and affordable housing around the world. As David said, I started at Habitat in August of 2005. You might recall that was right when Hurricanes Katrina and Rita hit. The 100-day plan I'd developed had to be completely reimagined. The storms along the Gulf Coast in the US, as well as the tsunami we were responding to in Asia, were unparalleled disasters for housing that required an unprecedented response. We drastically changed our ideas of what was possible and found ways to scale our work and grow awareness for our brand in ways we had never imagined. In the years following, Habitat served over 25,000 families in Asia and more than 6,000 families along the Gulf Coast as we helped rebuild communities. Shortly after the storms, along came the housing crisis. So once again, we had to restructure the way that we worked in the US. With the huge number of vacant and foreclosed homes that were gutting the market, neighborhood revitalization became, and still is, integral to our work in the United States. This brought our US strategy in line with the work we were doing globally. We've gone through hard times before, but Habitat has always found ways to be resilient. One important lesson we've learned is that when you're dealing with a crisis, do it in a way that moves your strategy forward. Examine whether that's the time to make any long-desired, difficult changes. After Katrina, we tipped some sacred cows. However, we did so by being religious about our principles, but not about our tactics. Habitat's blessed with an incredibly strong brand and halo of goodwill. That strength of brand attracts partners that enable us to help more families. However, we continue to encounter the fact that three rather significant things people think they know about Habitat turn out not to be true. For example, many people believe that Jimmy Carter founded and runs Habitat. He and Mrs. Carter are indeed our most famous volunteers, but did not start the organization. Another idea we must frequently correct is that we give homes away. Habitat offers a hand up, not a handout, to families who make a down payment, repay an affordable mortgage, and put in sweat equity to help build their homes and the homes of others. When people understand that we don't give homes away, but instead empower people to become homeowners, we establish a totally different position. The third misconception is that we operate only in the US. Many people are surprised to learn that well over 90% of the people Habitat serves lives in other countries, often in very difficult conditions. Our goal is to push markets to do a better job serving low-income families through housing microfinance and partnering with entrepreneurs to develop new construction innovations. So the second lesson I would offer is that we must relentlessly communicate our core messages, even when we think we've told our stories over and over. Despite 40 years of explaining what Habitat does and how we do it, we find that we still have to correct misconceptions and provide a high-level overview of the complexities of our work. To communicate more consistently across our network and to better deliver our messages to external audiences, we did some brand work beginning in 2014. We learned that people resonated with the idea that our efforts are not just about building houses. They liked seeing the benefits for families who participated in their own housing solutions. That research helped us refine our messaging about the impact that now focuses on helping families build strength, stability, and self-reliance. Partners like those ideas as well. That brings me to our third lesson, the need to focus on strategic rather than transactional partnerships. Any partnership should advance the purposes of both organizations and should focus on shared goals. Corporate social responsibility has evolved from the days when companies simply supported the CEO's favorite charity. We're now aware that companies attract the best talent and build loyalty among customers when they give back to the communities they serve. In addition, we've learned that the most enduring partnerships engage C-suite leaders, which allows ideas to move across silos in both organizations. Over the years, Habitat has developed a holistic approach to corporate partnerships that gives companies specific opportunities to create impact by engaging employees, activating consumers, and aligning with business goals. A number of our partnerships began at a grassroots level with employee engagement and an attraction to the brand. People want to be a part of changing lives and transforming communities. By leveraging the build experience to generate passion about our mission, we've expanded those relationships as our corporate partners have gotten excited about the strategic opportunities Habitat has to offer. Whirlpool is a good example. Over 2 decades, the partnership, which began with donations of a range and refrigerator for every new Habitat home in the US, has grown to include house builds and projects in more than 45 countries. Whirlpool has also supported cause marketing campaigns and sponsored large conferences and the annual Jimmy and Rosalind Carter Work Project. To date, more than 9,000 of their employees have volunteered with Habitat. In the old days, companies didn't want to brag about the good they were doing. Now, if you don't tell your story, you lose out. Engaging for good now means connecting to your purpose in a way that resonates with your customers and employees. With that in mind, we determined that some of our partners want to focus on specific groups in terms of engagement and beneficiaries. Here are 2 examples. Dedicated to improving the homes and lives of US veterans and their families, the Home Depot Foundation has funded critical home repairs on veterans' homes through Habitat's Repair Corps program. As a result, over 1,200 US veterans have been able to remain in their homes. Lowe's underwrites our Women Build program, an International Women Build Week. During this year's global event, more than 3,000 women volunteers supported 833 Habitat family members in over 300 communities. In response to the COVID crisis, Lowe's provided $250,000 to reimburse affiliates that donated more than 315,000 pieces of PPE to medical facilities across the country. In addition, Lowe's has invested $1 million to support Habitat's new Homes, Communities, Hope Plus You campaign. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Disaster response is a significant way in which partners support our work. Following the devastating storms of 2017 and 18, many companies stepped up to support our long-term disaster recovery efforts. AbbVie, a research-based global biopharmaceutical company, provided a generous 5-year grant that will enable Habitat to help families affected by Hurricane Maria and advocate for policies and systems to improve shelter, land, and resilience issues. Companies also give back in a variety of other ways. For more than 2 decades, Wells Fargo has provided philanthropic support to Habitat to build, renovate, or repair homes in the communities they serve. This national corporate partnership has expanded to support key Habitat initiatives, and the company was one of the first partners to join Habitat's Cost of Home advocacy campaign, which promotes policies and system changes to increase housing affordability. Through local builds made possible by Wells Fargo Foundation, the company is better able to measure impact and serve more families in need of affordable housing. For 3 decades, Bank of America supported Habitat's vision by funding their annual Global Build Week, which reaches over 108 communities and shines a spotlight on employees and Habitat families around the globe. Additionally, Bank of America has been a valued partner to support the Carter Work Project, all the way back to 1990, where they support us in Tijuana, Mexico, and most recently having joined our Cost of Home advocacy campaign cabinet. Before COVID, the US Conference of Mayors identified affordable housing as the #1 problem they face in the United States. Recognition of the housing crisis has influenced many other partners to examine ways they can join Habitat in building strong families and communities through shelter. To highlight the criticality of the global housing crisis and create opportunities for our brand partners to help families build a better life, we developed our Home is the Key cause marketing campaign. This annual campaign emphasizes the housing need and makes connections concerning the outcomes of our work. Our message is that stable and affordable housing is key to improved health, better education outcomes, and improved economic opportunities. The need for housing has only become worse with the COVID crisis, as incomes have been impacted so heavily. Just imagine the plight of those trying to shelter in place while living in unthinkable conditions. Or families trying to stock up on essential items when they're paying more than half their income on housing and have very little paycheck left. In a typical disaster, 80% of donated funds go to relief efforts, leaving very little for the long, slow recovery. That relief work is crucial, but we know that the road to build back after this pandemic will be long and the work hard. The economic devastation of COVID means that more families than ever will need our help. So building on the success of home is the key, and putting all three of the lessons I've shared with you today into practice, we launched our Homes, Communities, Hope, and You campaign to engage our partners and supporters in the critical work of helping build back our communities and the economy. We need to communicate louder and more consistently than ever the transformational role that housing can play in building stronger futures for families. Just as we found new ways to move our strategy forward after disasters such as Hurricane Katrina and the tsunami, Habitat will continue to adapt and respond as we emerge from the pandemic, so that when the time is right, we can again bring together people like you to build homes, communities, and hope. Sometimes we talk about big numbers and big plans, but I never want to forget that all of those efforts are about the individuals and families whose lives are being transformed. I can think of no better example than the story of my friend Boris. He's one of my favorites in my Better Angels book. So Boris grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, in really rough circumstances. He lived in a neighborhood called The Hole, with no indoor plumbing, no privacy, no good environment from which to study. And Boris was struggling. He was failing first grade. He was one of those children that could have been written off by our society. He told me everything changed for him in third grade when his mom qualified to buy a Habitat home. They moved from The Hole to Optimist Park. I love that imagery. To fast forward, suddenly Boris had stability, had a place to study, had more confidence. Turned out he was a very bright child. And many years later, earns a full scholarship to Davidson College, gets an MBA, has a career in banking and then affordable housing. And he's now the first person who grew up in a Habitat home to serve on our global board of directors. The world is a much better place because of Boris. But I am just reminded every day of all those other children who just need that opportunity to grow into all that God intended for them. Boris is such a powerful example of the impact of stable housing. So thank you again, Engage for Good, for this Halo Award. As we all try to envision the future where our world is healthier in so many ways, I hope that you'll see how Habitat's work changes lives for generations to come. We have big challenges and big opportunities we emerge from the COVID crisis. I invite you to join us on the journey. You can learn more from our website and social media. Please also reach out to us to find out how you can help move the world from helplessness to hope. Thank you. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for sharing such terrific examples of the work that you and your team have been doing over the last few years. And now we're fortunate that we have a few minutes for Q&A. So the first question, because I'm a nosy guy, what's with all the hats?
Hey, you know, we're not big on stock options or bonuses at Habitat. We are penny pinchers, but I have an amazing collection of hats and T-shirts. So those are the perks of the job.
All right.
I need hats, unfortunately.
Well, thank you for welcoming us into your home and to showing off your collection. You know, one of the things that so many companies, ways in which they get involved with your organization is that they are literally sending out teams to work on sites, whether you're renovating or creating a whole new house. I know you don't have a magic 8-ball to give the perfect answer to this, but what do you see as ramping up towards someday actually being able to get out there again?
Yeah, it feels, David, that we are just at the beginning of the reopening phase, and I think it's going to happen in phases. And so what's happening with Habitat is our stores are beginning to reopen now, and with all the safety protocols, and that's one step. And then the next step is we'll probably start with our kind of veteran professional volunteers. We've got this amazing group, the RV caravanners, who are self-sufficient and really highly trained. We've got others, those regular core volunteers. And the good news is outdoor construction is probably one of the safer things we can do. But I do think it'll be a step-by-step, and we'll want to be very comfortable that we can create a safe environment. And it may be a while till companies are comfortable sending their teams out. So we're doing a lot of work around virtual and skilled volunteering and other ways for people to contribute in the near term as we work towards a time when we can get everybody back out in the community.
So this is a little bit of a hardball question. It's something that you and I have discussed in the past. I know the history of your organization, a very faith-based, ethical organization in its roots, and you have very strong relationships with many financial institutions, which over the years, some of them have they've fallen out of grace in terms of they've been ethically challenged. And I wonder how, as an organization, you consider the relationships that you will have with different players who may have challenges.
Yeah, no, it's a hard but great question, David. I think first, the way we practically do it is we have a senior leadership committee that evaluates all partnerships. And so we look at any new partnership and it has to meet our criteria. And then what we don't do typically is if a company that we've never worked with has a scandal and then comes to us to kind of want to fix their reputation, we probably have a higher bar for that. If we have a long-term partner that has stumbles, our experience is we want to stay with them. And that doesn't mean we're condoning or supporting whatever actions individuals in those organizations may have taken, but that's different than walking away from a decades-long partnership that's having a real impact. And so for some of those long-term partnerships, we have worked with them and tried to have advice that, in the middle of the crisis, you have to be thoughtful about what messages you're sending and what the right time to do a campaign is. But our view is we want everybody to help with affordable housing. And it's, the truth is, if we said we would only work with perfect partners, it would be a very short list.
Mm. Years ago, we honored Whirlpool with the Golden Halo Award, largely on the beauty of the heyday of the campaign that they've had with you. And I know that relationship has continued as you profiled here today. Are there other companies in the home goods area that also have that kind of a relationship where virtually every house that you build has some of their components in it?
So we do. So particularly around donated materials, we've had some wonderful long-standing partners. So Dow Chemical was our very first corporate partner and donates the wallboard, styrofoam wallboard and insulation for all our houses. Valspar Paints, which is now part of Sherwin-Williams, donates all the paint for our houses. Assa Abloy donates all the lock sets for our houses. So we have a number of those partnerships where their donated products lower the cost of the house. And that's another way of helping with affordability that's been really important for us.
Do you see a change? I'm just curious. I live in a very nice town in New York, and being in the metro area, I know that one of the biggest challenges is finding any kind of buildable land when places are so expensive. Has there been a change in the 15 years that you've been there in terms of where houses can be placed?
It's the huge issue. If you look at why housing costs have risen so much faster than incomes, it's really the underlying land that's most of it. Materials have gone up, labor's gone up, but land is and our model wasn't built for $1 million lots in San Francisco. And so we're having to build more dense, we're having to be creative, we're having to do new kinds of financing where we have shared equity and other models to make it more affordable for families, because we want that long-term affordability, but still ownership, and the subsidy becomes very large. So land is a huge issue, and that's where the more expensive the land is, the more densely we build. But it's also a philosophical discussion we're having with cities all over the country, which is the best model for families is mixed income, mixed use communities where people can live close to where they work. That's better for the environment, it's better for their family. And what we've learned about inequality is that low income children living in mixed income communities still have the American dream. Their social mobility is pretty strong, but low income children living in concentrated poverty have almost no social mobility. And so we know philosophically what's right. Practically actually making that work from a zoning, from a land use perspective is a huge challenge. And that's where we really are trying to get our army of volunteers, not just to do construction, but also to become advocates and supporters of good housing for everyone, and rethinking how we can do zoning and make land available in the right places to be able to have enough affordable housing. Right now, I would argue the market's broken. We are so short of units. So I think the right answer is going to be bringing, mayors and cities together, city councils together with private developers, with nonprofits, with member leadership in the community, and really talking about what would it take to meaningfully increase the supply of affordable housing, because we're building far fewer units than we need in all our major cities.
Well, Jonathan, I could speak with you forever, but Megan is keeping me on a schedule, so I've got to keep moving on. I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts today and congratulate the entire Habitat for Humanity International team for being a wonderful unit that is creating positive change and working with businesses to make that possible. And I hope that this pandemic will end sooner rather than later, and I'll be able to see you again on a site build in the near future.
So look forward to that, David. Thank you again for this honor. It's great to be with you and with all of you.